At the Brown Palace, under chandeliers bright enough to bleach a lie, my wife placed a white envelope in my hand. Not a love note, not a toast, a divorce petition. Served to me at the launch party of the law firm I funded. Cameras flickered, glasses chimed. Someone laughed into their fist, like they'd just seen a magician reveal the trap door. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I felt the weight of the paper, the waxy slip of the flap, and I said two words that cut through the brass and chatter. Thank you. Then I slipped the envelope into my jacket, looked up at the logo I'd paid to put on every screen in that ballroom, and promised myself, and the room that was suddenly very interested in my face, that tonight I would take back everything. My name is Mason Reed. I'm 42, son of a carpenter who could make a door sing on its hinges, and a mother who taught third grade long enough to learn every trick a child can pull and every hope worth saving. I wrote code in a cabin that still smells like pine tar and coffee, built a fintech tool that helped small contractors get paid on time, sold it, and thought, that's enough for me. It wasn't. It never is for people who spent their 20s calculating the price of every dream on a spreadsheet named Someday. When Lena, my wife, said she wanted a firm that could stand up for the accused without selling its soul, I said yes before she finished the sentence. Yes to the office near 17th Street. Yes to the library that would smell like arguments and old paper. Yes to the leather chairs and the interns who would watch her walk the halls and decide to become different people. I moved $20 million into the dream, and I did it the way I build everything, with measured hands. People think funding your spouse is a hard decision. It is. It also has to be a head decision if you respect the person you're building with, and if you respect yourself. So I structured it as investment and loan, braided together with covenants as tight and simple as a well-tied knot. Transparency, cash controls, key person clauses, audit rights, a sweep account that moved idle cash to an escrow. I controlled if the firm violated the one thing we promised each other the day she asked me to trust her, fiduciary duty. We called the firm Cross and Vale, her last name, and her partners. I told myself that didn't bother me. Most days it didn't. Some nights it did. That's marriage too, the truths you live with, and the truths you fight with in the mirror. The night of the launch looked like they always look when people want to be seen. Waiters moving like chess pieces, gold light forgiving pores and doubt, name tags trying to tell you who matters. Lena looked like a headline the world would believe. The speech she gave started with gratitude and ended with independence. Our firm stands on its own 2 feet, she said, and laid a hand on my shoulder like a person touching a museum piece she intended to donate elsewhere. Trent, her partner, stood a fraction too close. His smile had the shape of a boy who thinks the fire is there to warm him and not to test him. Somewhere between thank you and the applause, she took the envelope from the inside of her blazer and presented it the way some people present awards, with both hands, flat like ceremony. No one heard the air leave my chest, but I did. It sounded like a hinge settling. I didn't ask why. I didn't ask how long. Every question a betrayed person wants, answered, is a shadow long enough to fall over the truth. I put the envelope away, kissed her on the cheek for the cameras, said, enjoy the night, and walked out of the ballroom while a saxophone made a circle of sound no one wanted to step into. The hallway carpet was the kind that erases footsteps. Good carpets respect privacy. I stood under a sconce, loosened the knot in my tie, and let the hate pass me like a storm I chose not to name. Rage is noisy. Justice is quiet. The first time my father showed me how to square a frame, he said, measure twice, cut once, and then he added the part he only said to me when his back hurt and the weather pressed on his hands, and never cut angry. I didn't cut anything that night. I took an elevator to a suite with a desk they rented me for 3 days, because that's how long a launch takes to turn into a mess if you've planned your mess well. When I opened my laptop, Denver sat under the windows like a patient animal, lit, humming, unaware. I authenticated into the vault I'd set up before the first dollar moved. The contracts weren't vindictive. They were precise, transparency triggers. prohibitions on related party payments without disclosure, a cash sweep if the firm breached fiduciary duty, say, by concealing material relationships or diverting funds to non-firm purposes. Payroll controls that required my countersignature for any change in compensation above a certain threshold. A small, unromantic universe of if-then statements that never asked why people do what they do, only what the system must do when they do it. I started with a notice of breach, not because I wanted to set the building on fire, but because the building needed to hear its own alarms. The email was 2 paragraphs and 3 attachments. It went to the partners, to the controller, and, because I am never sentimental about proof, to my counsel. I invoked transparency clauses and demanded a full ledger for the last 90 days. I did not accuse anyone of anything. I simply copied the sections the firm had agreed to when the paint was still wet and the smiles were still real. Then I triggered a vendor payment hold. Providers would still be able to invoice. The payments would wait in a queue labeled pending review. It is amazing how fast people remember their duty when money stops moving. I paused at payroll. None of this was meant to break the people who came to work to make rent and buy groceries for children I'd never meet. So the hold I placed was not a guillotine. It was a hand on the brake with a window of 2 business days, contingent on a meeting to explain the variance between projected cash and actuals, the partner distributions and special bonuses queued up as red flags. Salaries in the lower brackets were green. I locked red. I let green pulse. My phone lit with alerts, the way a person with a conscience blushes. My conscience is not perfect. It is practiced. Kayla calling, said the screen, operations coordinator, the only person in that office who could map a workflow with one hand and put out a fire with the other. I let it ring twice. Mason, she said, like the word had become a liability. We're frozen. Is this an error? I told her to breathe. I told her to bring everyone who signed anything to the 14th floor conference room at 8 in the morning. Bring the ledger, I said. Bring the vendor list. Bring a calculator that doesn't lie. She whispered, okay. The way people whisper when they've heard a truth through a wall and pretend they didn't. The night didn't get quieter. It got exact. I moved through the dashboards and watched the firm's pulse while the party 2 floors down tried to persuade itself laughter can drown a problem. Trent texted me a message that read like a man who had recently discovered the word synergy. I ignored it. Lena sent a single line. We'll talk tomorrow. I turned off notifications. Some words don't deserve a night with you. By sunrise, the city was the color of an old coin. I made coffee that tasted like purpose and walked to the glass box where every good decision looks cold until a bad decision enters the room. They came in waves. First Kayla, with a face that says she slept on answers and woke up with questions. Then 2 associates who tried to look older than their suits. Then Lena and Trent, together, like punctuation pretending to be grammar. Lena didn't sit. Trent sat too far back, like chairs owe him a living. We have a problem, Kayla began, and I nodded like a patient teacher who already knew which page the error lived on. She projected the cash flow. She pointed to the red. She invited the partners to explain the discrepancy between the anticipated receivables and the burn. Trent talked about growth. Lena talked about independence. I talked about covenants, not like a hammer, like a map. You signed for transparency, I said. Slide 1, Section 5.1. You signed for cash integrity, I said. Slide 2, Section 7.3. You signed for key person conduct, I said. Slide 3, Section 9.2. I didn't ask why the office lease deposit had been doubled without the committee notice. I didn't ask why the marketing retainer had doubled exactly when the partner dinners became longer and the receipts became vaguer. I didn't need to say the word relationship. The numbers did the gossip. Lena's hands were steady. She has always been brave. That is, I think, the hardest part about betrayal. The qualities you loved don't die, just because they were used without you. What do you want? She asked, as if the night before had been a negotiation and not a performance. A way forward, I said, but not the way we walked in here. Trent leaned into the table with the confident ignorance of a man who thinks momentum equals mastery. You can't just choke the firm, he said. The bar will hear about this. I smiled at him the way an old carpenter smiles at a boy measuring from the wrong edge. No one is choking anything, I said. We're pausing the bleed to stop an infection. And the bar will hear anything that violates the fiduciary duty you advertised on giant screens last night. So let's talk about duty. I laid out the folder. Paper has a sound when it meets a table. A flat, certain sound, like a door closing in the right frame. My counsel had prepared short-form resolutions, compliant with the operating agreement the partners signed the day they took my money, and smiled. The language was not unkind. It was unambiguous. We will unfreeze payments under conditions you'll sign today, I said. First, a forensic audit covering the last 12 months. Second, a governance shift reflecting reality. The capital member takes control to remediate breach. Third, operational changes. I looked at Trent and then at Lena because the truth belongs to the person who can carry it. And that includes personnel. The room took a breath. It didn't release. Even the projector fan sounded guilty. Lena said my name like a plea and a warning. I said hers like a fact that can survive an earthquake. You handed me a divorce petition at our launch, I said evenly. You chose a theater. I'm choosing architecture. If we're building something that can live, it needs load-bearing walls. This is me installing them. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't enjoy the power. I know what power does to bad architects. I spoke like a man who has seen a frame go out of square by a quarter inch and heard the house complain about it for the rest of its life. Trent resigns today. No severance. 5-year non-compete along the Front Range. Lena steps down from management and takes an advisory role for 12 months. Optional, no voting rights. The firm is renamed Summit Legal Partners under Reed Legal Group. Vendor queue is reopened after signatures. Payroll resumes on schedule, green band first. Kayla's shoulders dropped half an inch. The kind of relief that says someone brought a plan instead of a story. The associates stared at their mugs like they might hold an exit. Trent laughed. It sounded like a metal ruler slapped against a desk. You can't be serious, he said. I looked around the table at the people who came here to practice law and found themselves trapped in a drama. I'm not here to be dramatic, I said. I'm here to be exact. Lena's eyes were wet, but not from fear, from calculation. She has always been the cleverest person in any room. She could see the path. She could also see the cliff. And if we refuse, she asked, voice even, chin squared. I tapped the folder. Then the sweep continues. The vendors wait. The payroll red band remains locked, and we explain to every set of ears that needs to know why covenants exist and who broke them. I'd rather do this together, but I'm prepared to do it right. Silence can be violent, but this silence was clean. It was the quiet of a cut made straight. Lena took the pen first, because she is brave and because brave people know when the building is going to fall and how to walk the stairwell without theatrics. She read faster than Trent could think. Her eyes tracked each line, and when she reached the non-compete, she looked up at him with the kind of tenderness a surgeon gives a tumor before removing it, respect for the skill it took to grow, none for the damage it caused. Sign, she said to him, not to me. You will not drag this through the street. Trent started to perform. Something about principles, something about leverage. I didn't interrupt. Performance eats itself when it can't find an audience. Kayla slid a second copy in front of him, steady as a metronome. He signed his name with a flourish that made the paper look tired. The resolutions moved like a quiet river. Board control to Reed Legal Group during remediation. Forensic audit authorized. Third party, no limitations. Payroll resumed in green band immediately. Red band subject to committee review under new governance. Vendor queue released by order of necessity. Rent, malpractice insurance, research tools, then everything else. The renaming provision made the room colder by 3 degrees. People grieve logos. They also recover. When Lena reached the advisory role clause, her hand paused, then finished the stroke. She was not crying. I have always admired that about her. Tears are for private rooms, not for rooms that will remember how you cried more than why. When the last page lay flat on the walnut, I released the sweep. Numbers moved like blood returning to a numbed limb. People's phones lit in their laps. Vendors confirming. Staff Slack channels pinging. A collective exhale you could feel in the carpet. I thanked Kayla. I thanked the associates by name. I even thanked Trent, because it is healthy to remember that some opponents give you the chance to practice discipline you would not otherwise practice. Is this revenge? Lena asked again, not unkindly. I took a breath that did not hurt. No, this is a renovation, I said. Revenge is obsessed with the other person. Renovation is obsessed with the house. She nodded once, like a woman in a courtroom. Entering a plea she believes will hold up on appeal. We ended the meeting with a schedule. Audit kickoff by Friday 10 a.m. Governance transition filed with the Secretary of State by end of day. Staff town hall at 4. No blame, no gossip, only the plan and the work. Trent gathered a few personal items with an air of someone who thinks security escorts are for other people. There was no escort. There was only Kayla at the door, offering a dignified path and a receipt for anything he insisted on taking. Boundaries bless everyone in the room, even the person who hates them most. Word travels in a law firm the way heat travels in a small house. Everywhere, even to closed rooms. By afternoon, I was standing in the largest conference room telling the staff what mattered, that nobody's rent would bounce this month because grown-ups had made bad decisions, that the firm would be audited because integrity is not a slogan, it's a system, that the name on the door would change, but the purpose of the work would not. Advocate hard, bill honestly, go home proud. They didn't clap. People who are trying to decide if they can pay for daycare don't clap at speeches. But shoulders lowered. Eye contact returned. Someone asked a question about trial support budgets. Another about the clinic calendar. Real questions are the first sign a fire is out. After the town hall, I walked past the framed mission statement we'd printed when everyone still believed good intentions were flak jackets. Beneath it, a bulletin of pro bono cases, tenant disputes, expungements, immigration filings. Law is a brutal instrument in the wrong hands and a beautiful lever in the right. I stood there longer than I meant to. That's when the idea stopped being a feeling and became a sentence I could read out loud. The next morning, I announced the pivot. $10 million. To establish the Summit Justice Collective, a nonprofit litigation and advocacy partner that would do 3 things better than we ever had. Fund meritorious cases for people who cannot pay, train young attorneys to fight clean, and build data tools to track patterns of abuse no one wants to see because they make fundraising harder. The capital would be irrevocable. The governance would be separate. The partnership with the firm would be public and arm's length, because the only way to make cynics shut up is to cut the strings they are certain must be there. You will ask why I would give that money after being handed a divorce petition in a ballroom. I will tell you the truth I had to learn in an empty kitchen at 2 in the morning while the coffee turned to mud. I am not a judge. I am a builder. And a builder who tears down without a plan is just a man with a hammer and a mood. If you've been betrayed, you already know how heavy a mood can be. Summit Justice took its first case inside a week. An apartment complex on the edge of the city had been tacking administrative fees onto low-income tenants' ledgers in amounts that looked like pocket change and behaved like handcuffs. $20 here, $50 there, penalties for paying online, for paying in person, for asking for a printed receipt. Tenants who complained found themselves inspected into oblivion. We didn't file a press release. We filed a complaint. We didn't call a reporter. We called discovery. And when the numbers surfaced, the emails, the scripts, the notes explaining which tenants wouldn't fight, we proposed a settlement figure that respected the math and the damage. The company did what companies do when the math is on the screen and the judge has seen it. They nodded through their counsel and cut the check. I attended the final hearing without speaking. A woman in the 3rd row held a baby, old enough to watch the ceiling lights like they were weather. An older man wore his only suit, like it was holding him together. When the judge approved the settlement and described the compliance measures out loud, something in the room changed temperature. The baby slept. The suit relaxed. A young lawyer from the collective wiped her nose on a sleeve she couldn't afford to replace and laughed at herself for doing it. I stood in the back and thought, this is how you eat the poison. Not by spitting it back at the person who poured it, but by making something that can digest it into nutrition for people you will never meet. Lena did not attend the hearing. We were busy being adults who share a past and a ledger. We spoke on a Tuesday in a conference room that used to be a broom closet and now held 2 chairs and 5 years of history. I shouldn't have done the envelope, she said, as if the problem were etiquette. You shouldn't have done a lot of things, I said, and kept my voice kind because cruelty is not a virtue, even when it is available. We divided furniture with a spreadsheet. We divided holidays with civility. We left the rest to time. The word forgiveness makes a lot of promises in books. In real life, it's more like a permission slip you re-sign every morning. Permission to live forward without revising yesterday into a story that flatters you. Summit Legal Partners, our renamed firm, found its footing. The audit cleaned out habits that had grown like vines in shade. We lost some clients who preferred the drama. We kept the ones who preferred results. Kayla got a title she'd already been performing. The associates learned that excellence can be quiet. And I learned to leave at 6 on Fridays because buildings do not love you back, and neither does the work, but the people who wait for you in kitchens and on porches might. Every story like mine collects commentary the way a ship collects barnacles. Some people wrote that I should have burned it all down. Some wrote that I was naive to invest in a marriage. Some told me I was monstrous for freezing payroll at all, as if discernment and malice share a closet. I read most of it. I responded to none of it. I have a rule for public noise. If it can't survive the question, "What did you build?" it doesn't get a chair at my table. So here is my answer to the unasked question you brought into this video with your own history, folded like a note in your pocket. What do you do when someone hands you a white envelope in a golden room and every cell in your body screams to make a scene loud enough to register on satellites? You measure. You steady your hands. You use the systems you built on a calm day for the storm you didn't want. You protect the people who didn't betray you. You remove the people who did. And then, especially then, you take the part of you that wants to salt the earth and you give it a job. Go plant something better. If you've lived through betrayal, you already know that public humiliation is an echo chamber and that anger is an athlete. Fast, strong, and dumb. Justice is a carpenter. It takes measurements. It respects grain. It chooses screws over nails when the load is heavy. It braces the wall you will have to lean on when the weather comes back. Revenge is a fire. Justice is a house. I left the Brown Palace that night with a promise I kept. I did not break the firm. I rebuilt it. I did not become the worst thing I'd been handed. I made a place that could hold someone else's best chance. The envelope did not define me. The blueprint did. If this is your first time here, know this. I read the comments, not for gossip, for company. Tell me how you rebuilt or how you plan to. Tell me what you would have done in that room, burn or build, and why. Someone scrolling at 2 in the morning might find your sentence and decide to use a different tool. That matters. She gave me divorce papers at our launch. I answered with a plan that fed people who will never know my name. That is the only kind of revenge that doesn't rot. That is the renovation I will live in.